Hello and welcome to our Inside Story. This is just a look behind the scenes of things that are going on here at Charis Bible College, Andrew Womack Ministry. And you know, there are so many things happening that there is just no way we could ever advertise it in our newsletters or put it on television. And so this is an attempt to just give you a look behind the scenes at some of the things that are happening. And typically we interview somebody that God has brought to us. And today I am really, really blessed to have my good friend Greg Mohr, Pastor Greg Mohr with us. And Greg, you are a blessing to me and to a lot of people. You're an important part of what's happening here. And I just thank you for coming on our Inside Story.
Well, it's great to be part, Andrew. You know, this is actually this month will be our 10-year anniversary serving with you.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And you've been in the ministry, I know, for 28 years. I think you pastored in Decatur, Texas, and you were in the ministry before that.
Yeah, when we were over children. We had a children's ministry in a church, and then we went to Bible college, and then we started a church and pastored in Houston, Texas for 3 years, and then we moved to Decatur, Texas, and there 24 years. Yeah.
Oh, 24. So I met you in Decatur, and that was in 91. So it's been 30 years ago that we first met. And I tell you, I went to your church every year for many years, and I was impressed. And most of you don't have the benefit of knowing Pastor Greg, but he is a true pastor. I mean, there's a lot of people who are preachers that are pastoring, but they aren't pastors. Yeah. But Greg and Janice, his wife, are true pastors. They love people, and that was a healthy church. I mean, I went there multiple times, and you get a feel for what's going on, and it was a very, very healthy church there in Decatur, Texas.
Yeah, that's where you met Paul Milligan. Paul was one of my elders in my church and my worship leader. And
so Bob Nichols is Pastor Greg's pastor, and Bob Nichols is on my board, and so we've got a lot of people that we know, but so we could talk about a million things, but talk about how you came to be working for us here, because it's kind of an unusual story, but I think it could encourage people that what even looks like something bad, God can work it around for good.
Well, we had pastored, it was about 22 years, and I just felt this sense of God had something more. I really felt like there was a ceiling on our ministry. Wasn't sure what it was. I mean, there was some things I wanted to write some books and do some other things, and I'd actually had it in my heart years ago that I would be teaching in a Bible school, you know. So, but I didn't try to self-fulfill it, and we were happy to be pastoring where we were. But then I started seeking the Lord, and He made it clear to me He had a new assignment for me. So, you know, I shared that with a few people, and Pastor Bob Nichols was one of those, and Wendell Parr and some other people outside of our ministry. And they felt like it was God, but, you know, so we just waited on the Lord, and I was on the board of this large African ministry. They showed the Jesus film. They had 50 teams that would show the Jesus film in 7 different African nations. And the president decided he wanted to step down. So long story short, they came to me and said, would you transition and take this ministry? And so we felt like it was God, and so we started to do that, and I was still able to pastor too for a period of time. Finally, after 7 months of doing that, things had grown. We grew in a recessionary time from 1 million to 1.2 million. Grew from 600 partners to about 1,000 partners. And so I turned the church over to a son in the faith. And 7 weeks after we turned the church over, the president decided he wasn't ready because
after you'd given up everything.
Yeah, things had grown, and he wasn't really ready to give it up. And
let me just interject that some people don't have this perspective, but for a minister who's been in the ministry for that time, probably 25, 30 years, you built this ministry, you had a beautiful facility and all of these things going, and to just walk away from that is no small thing. You had
Yeah.
made probably one of the toughest decisions of your life.
Yeah, we had $2 million of property debt free, and then we had this 19 acres out on the highway we were going to build on. But anyway, hey, it's not my church, Andrew. It's not my. It's following God and what He has.
I agree
for
with
us.
you 100%, Greg, but that's rare.
Right.
It's rare as hen's teeth for ministers to be that secure
Right.
that God, this is yours. That's the way it should be, but it's not always.
And so 7 weeks after I turned my church over, in fact, you sent a video and congratulated us and so on, and Bob Nichols was there. We had a big banquet. But 7 weeks after I turned my church over, this guy calls me in his office and fires me.
And he fired you because you'd done so good that the ministry was now, he was willing to take it back.
He just said, I said, what do you mean? We never had a cross word with one another. And he said, no, just not a right fit. I said, no, I thought to myself, well, I can't go back and take my church over unless I'm like you, right? And so anyway.
Now, what does that mean, unless you're like me?
Yeah, I mean, unless I can't go take my church back over unless I'm like you.
Oh, okay. Well,
like
you were
him.
pointing to
Okay,
me.
no,
I
not
thought
you.
I wouldn't do that.
No. This guy that I'm talking to. No,
All right.
I know you wouldn't. But the thing we decided, Andrew, was that God spoke to me. He had a new assignment for me, and that this man's bad decision couldn't change that.
That's right.
Now we had to make a decision it's like sticky fly paper. People wanted to come and have me sue this guy and all this stuff, but wouldn't that be wonderful? Pastor sues ministry. It's like, no, you know what? That's between him and the Lord, and God's got a plan for us. So we just took time, got that over on the Lord, and then Paul Milligan, I went to talk to Paul about this, and he said, pray for me, Greg, because Andrew wants me to start a business school.
Yeah, so let me interject right here that I think it was the same week that you found out that this guy took the ministry back and you'd lost your job. You came up here to Colorado, and I remember sitting in our conference room down at Elkton, and you were you weren't grieved, but you were bothered. I gave up everything, and you were, what do I do? And when I heard about it, instead of sympathizing with you and comforting you, I thought, you're available?
Yeah.
I got excited, like, this is God. And man, immediately we said, you need to come and help us. So I don't know how all of this worked together, but from my standpoint, it was, I don't think I could have blasted you out of that church in Decatur, but because of what had happened, you were available. And I said, man, would you come to work for us?
Yeah, and that was just 10 years ago this month. Yeah.
And that was awesome. And there's a lot of things we could talk about here, but you came in and you just started doing whatever was necessary, and you helped with world outreach, and you did a lot of things. And I remember after a year or two, it wasn't too long, you came to me and said, look, I'm here to serve you, and whatever you want, I'll do, but my heart is really in the Bible school, and I would like to do that. And he said, if you say that you want me to stay here, I'll stay here, and I'll never complain about it. Man, that attitude is priceless, Greg.
Well, God called us here to serve you, Andrew. I mean, your vision is so amazing, and we felt like God called us here to lift up your arms and be a blessing wherever you needed us.
But that attitude that you were not promoting yourself, and you would do whatever you felt like I wanted you to do. So when I heard that, I said, well, we want to put you in your sweet spot. So you started ministering in the school, and you actually directed Charis Bible College here in Woodland Park for how many years? Yeah,
I was a dean of education for 2 years, and then became the director for 5 years. And so it was great. I still teach in the school, and I also oversee the ministry school.
And the ministry school is what? There might be some people watching that would like to know.
Well, in our third year schools, we have 7 different schools, and business and creative arts and worship and ministry and media and missions and practical government and global training, which is missions, and so I oversee the ministry school, which is those people that feel called to ministry full time, whether it's pastoring or traveling ministry or whatever. We will train people to develop their communication skills, their ability to go out and plant churches, all kinds of things that they couldn't do as effectively on their own.
And I think this is one of the things that sets Charis apart is because we've got people who've pastored for 30 plus years, teaching people how to be a pastor. Whereas many Bible schools, you have people that have just read a book about it. They hadn't actually done it.
So it's people, we bring people in, all different types of ministries, prophetic ministries, evangelists, Scott Hinkle would bring Dwayne Sheriff and Bob Yandian and Happy Caldwell as pastors, and of course I'm a pastor, and so we bring people in to train them to be successful in what God's put in their heart. And we've seen youth ministries birth, women's ministries birth, men's ministries, street ministries, a plethora of number of churches just that are out there. And then Janice and I get to travel, and there's nothing that blesses me more and was more fulfilling than ministering in a church or a Bible college that was birthed out of our ministry school. It's awesome.
And I think you share my heart that both of us are at an age where it's not about us just doing it. We want to impart into other people who can keep this going after we're gone.
It's about the kingdom. It's not about my kingdom or serving others, which is what drew me. One of the things that drew me to your ministries is you're always promoting other people, Andrew, and lifting other people up, and that's such a blessing. That's Jesus.
It is. And so you did that until, was it just a year ago that you transitioned from Charis into ARMI?
Yes, last August.
Oh, is it not even been a year?
Yeah, it hasn't even been a year. Yeah.
And so tell the people what ARMI is and how did this happen? Is it something you wanted, or did we force this on you, or what's happening?
Yeah, well, ARMI is the Association of Related Ministries International, and essentially what ARMI is about is it's a relational community of ministers, both traveling ministers and pastors, where we provide an organization where there's fellowship, there's encouragement and support. Ministers typically are isolated, and it gives them a place to belong and be a part of. But also we do specific ongoing leadership development and training through our Zoom meetings, through local meetings. I just came back from a meeting in Phoenix where we trained leaders in particular areas, and then we provide them just an abundance of resources from your ministry.
Yeah, I forget the exact amount, but it's probably $2,000 or more of free resources you get when you sign up.
It's a lot, and so I love ARMI because I love ministries and I love ministers, and you had it in your heart that you wanted someone to oversee it, that could focus full time on it. And Dr. Burns did a tremendous job birthing ARMI.
Barry Burns helped me get it started and took it from 0 up to close to about 600 people.
It was about, it was a little over 500 people.
But he was pastoring a church in Johnson City, Tennessee, and he was awesome and blessing. But it was just time to go to the next level.
Yeah.
And this is what surprised me. In my way of thinking, you being the director of Charis Bible College is a pretty prestigious position. You're influencing a lot of people. And yet you really have a heart for ministers, and you just felt like it was an even better fit to go and take over ARMI and run it.
Yeah, and with directing the Bible school, there's a lot of administration, and it was becoming weighted more on the administration part than the ministry part. And when Dr. Burns, I went to him, and he's, Dr. Burns, we love you and we appreciate everything you're doing, but Andrew wants somebody full time, and he said, well, he's right, but I can't do it because I'm pastoring this church. Mm-hmm. And so then I came to you and shared that with you, and I think you said something like along the lines of, well, we really need somebody like you, Greg, that's had pastoral experience. I said, well, and I'd already talked to my wife. I said, really, this is my sweet spot, and I'd like to minister to ministers. And so, we prayed about it, you prayed about it, and felt like it was God. And then, we had people that were in the wings that we trained and that had a heart to oversee the school, and we took about 2 or 3 months to transition that. And when we turned it over to Carrie Pickett, but now she's got Daniel Bennett under her directing it. But I said, now guys, this is not a one-dimensional school. There's a lot of things going. We spent about 2 months helping them to transition, so it was smooth. And I still teach and instruct the school, instruct at the school.
So you're still a part of Charis, you just now are focused on
And I love
ARMI.
Charis. I don't want to separate from it.
And so since you've taken it over since August, it's grown from around, 600 to, today it was 784 members, I think.
Yeah,
that is a huge growth.
We're growing, and I think part of it is just the fact that we're able to focus in more time and attention to that, and also to the members. And that's the thing, Andrew, with your heart for ministers is we've organized this now where we've got regional directors, advocates, and then area advocates where then they're reaching out to the members. They're available for them if they have a question, if they have a need. They're there to counsel them. They're there to give them the word, share their experience. And so it's really ministers ministering to ministers, and providing a safe place for them to come. And it's really, really powerful.
And I remember when we shared you taking over ARMI with the people, we did a video conference back during the COVID stuff, and man, they were excited.
Yeah.
And I mean, there is an enthusiasm that these people are really excited about ARMI, because ministry, of course, as a pastor, that it gets kind of lonely sometimes. And ARMI is meeting a need for these people.
Yeah, we had this meeting in Phoenix, a regional ARMI meeting in Phoenix recently, and this new song was kind of new to me, that there's nothing better than you. He turns graves into gardens. He turns bones into armies. And the Spirit of God spoke to me, Andrew, very clear. And I turned to Pastor Freddie, who was hosting the meeting there. I said, God spoke to me. He's turning bones into army. And then I got up and shared. There's a lot of dislocated bones in the form of ministries in the body of Christ. And ARMI, we're going to locate the dislocated. Amen. And bring them into the family. And we're going to do more together than we can individually. Amen. And the prophetic voice that you have, Andrew, what we're going to do is gather an army around that and help amplify that and spread that, so that this almost too good to be true news gets spread all over the world.
And so we're helping the ministers individually in their personal lives. We're helping them in their church, providing resources. But we're also networking together. They're getting fellowship that really helps. And another thing is we're beginning to get more and more political and motivating people out there, and to stand together, to get 800 ministers together and to say something, that's going to have more of an impact than one person standing up.
Well, we can do more together than we can individually, and God's blessing is on unity. And so we're doing that. I just appreciate your heart for ministers and for the body of Christ and the kingdom of God. And I think for such a time as this, He's called us to come together to make a real difference in the world and in individual ministries, serve them, resource them, but also give them a cause to rally around for us to make a difference.
So have you gotten any feedback from these ministers as to how ARMI is helping them, or these networks? Is it making a difference, or what kind of testimonies
they're just loving it. I mean, I get testimonies all the time of people saying, man, I've been looking for a place to belong. I've been looking for my company, a place that is a safe place I can come, but also who will speak the truth in love to me. Some people some ministers get off on tangents and things, and there's this balance, accountability, and they send emails back to us and let us know how blessed they are by the webinars that we do. We do monthly webinars. In fact, you did one in January, and I did one in February, and the training that we give. We give Army members, Andrew, they get for their membership, they get your living Bible commentary.
That's the best thing I've got to offer. Most
that
people
is
don't
amazing.
know it, but it's good.
Because you've got comments on just about every verse in the Bible, and I use it, and they all minister. That's by itself is worth, worth the price of being a member. And then you get 4 Charis Bible College courses per year that you can actually turn into. If you haven't graduated from Bible college, we've got a continuing education program where a minister can actually graduate through Charis.
Yeah, that continuing education is basically the first 2 years of Charis condensed into 1 year, and they give credit to the ministers for life experience. And in 1 year of video, you can actually get a diploma from Charis Bible College.
And then they get put on a call list for our phone center when 50,000 plus people call in a month, and if people are always looking for churches and that believe and teach like you do, well, so they get put on a list, and people will drive an hour, sometimes 45 minutes, an hour and a half to find one church and they found it through calling the phone center here.
People are looking for a company to join.
And they are. And then we have all these regional meetings. We have an annual conference every year here, the Ministers Conference, and we have several regional meetings per year. We're getting major traction and momentum, and everybody's blessed. They're just so blessed by it.
Ministers have needs that sometimes people don't recognize, and you can't just go to everybody in your church and share it.
Right.
And I remember you coming to our ministers' conference in Buena Vista when you had, what was it, a $9 million lawsuit?
Yeah, we went through a $9 million frivolous lawsuit that was based on counseling. It got dropped 2 years later, but we were on the picture of the Wise County Messenger, pastor is sued for my $9 million.
Oh,
well, that gave rise to an involuntary church plant, or otherwise known as a church split, where my worship leader took a third of my congregation.
And let me just add this, that worship leader was really turned on to my teaching, and I knew him, and he came and told Greg that it was my teaching that caused him to split and take people from his church. And Greg was gracious enough to not blame me for what somebody blamed me for.
Yeah, that's not God, is it?
But you know what? There's not very many. Again, Greg, this is, the people that we have in our Bible school, it's awesome because God has supernaturally brought us together. And we've got people like Greg and Janice that honestly, they have a maturity level that allows them to look at a person who splits their church and blames me for it, and yet you didn't blame me for it.
Yeah.
That's only God.
Yeah, well, we can't afford to get offended. If you allow yourself to get offended, Jesus said in the end times, many will become offended, and then it says they'll betray many, hate many, false prophets will rise, deception, lawlessness, and cold love. There in Matthew 24, right in the middle of that list, it said many false prophets rise.
Yeah.
False prophets come from the place of becoming offended. And so I'm not going to get stuck and live in a time warp of my pain in the past,
Well, thank you for doing that.
Well,
I'm glad you didn't.
Well, we just love your ministry, and
so here
love
you were
Jamie.
at our ministers' conference with a $9 million lawsuit, and what happened at the conference? Bob Nichols laid hands on Janice and I, and also Jerry and Ernie Garcia, and we just kind of fell out under the power, and we were hurting, we were bleeding, and on the inside, we cried until we couldn't cry anymore. Then we laughed until we couldn't laugh anymore. They had to carry us to our room. And Pastor Gray, I don't know if your hair is shorter now or what.
Must be.
But his hair,
sure is,
it was all combed back. And after he'd been crying and stuff, his hair was down over his face. He kind of looked like that cousin It or something. His whole face was covered with hair. I mean, you were just undone. And Janice has the funniest laugh. When she gets to laughing, everybody else is going to wind up laughing. I remember that night very vividly.
But the Lord healed us through that experience, plus the love and acceptance that we got there at the ministers' conference. You've been doing these ministers' conferences for how many years, Andrew?
I think it's 37 years.
So what we're doing with ARMI is we're exporting the ministers' conference in the way and the spirit in which you love and minister. So we received healing. We want to pass that on, and we were looking for a way to get out. It gave us motivation to stay, and I'm so glad we did, because then the church went on and was just very successful, and we birthed other churches out of our church, and now we're here helping other ministries be successful in what God called them
And
to
the
do.
reason I brought that up is to say that I'm not sure you could have received exactly the way you did at that ministers' conference if you'd have just stayed in your church.
Yeah.
You needed to get away from that
Yeah.
situation. You needed to be with people who understood and who were ministering to you. And their ministers have needs that they need ministers to minister to them.
Yeah, and ministers' wives the same way,
Absolutely.
and that we need to have a safe place we can come and fellowship, but people with experience who can help you move into a place of becoming a victor instead of staying a victim.
And one of the strange things about being in ministry is that you can't go to your church members and necessarily tell them all the things, because it's going to be criticizing another church member or exposing yourself, and they'll go out and tell everybody. And so it's kind of a tough situation. You really need a group of ministers that you can relate to.
And you need to be accountability. I mean, I want somebody to speak the truth in love to me. That's when I went to Pastor Bob during that time, and then you and Jamie, and you guys helped us to get God's perspective on the situation. I remember Joy Nichols told Janice that she was complaining, now they're writing letters about us, and she said, we've all done and said things we regretted later, haven't we? And she just put it back on us. Well, see, this is what ARMI is about, is we want to help people be successful, and we'll speak the truth in love. We'll help you be accountable, but it's a safe place where you can grow, where you can build long-lasting relationships. There at the ministers' conference, Andrew, we built our some of our best friends were established there.
I'd say my best friends are in that ministers' conference.
Yeah.
It's really important. We have a couple of graduates that are over in Vietnam ministering, the young husbands. You probably know them.
Yes, I know Craig.
And they just got blackballed by the whole Baptist denomination and branded as a cult because of me. And they put out a 10, 15-page thing with my quotes showing that I'm a cult leader, and they branded them. And so Kim wrote, "What do we do?" And you could tell she was just shattered by it. And I read the whole thing, and I said, man, that was great. There's enough truth in there that a person could get born again and set free. And I said, just make sure you don't get in the grandstands. And so by me, coming to me and asking, I was able to just encourage her and say, welcome to the ministry. And it puts things into perspective, whereas if you're by yourself, you just get tunnel vision. You need that input of other ministers.
Yeah, Jesus said, rejoice when you're persecuted, right?
Right.
And a lot of people aren't doing that. Well, what we do is help one another, encourage one another to act on the word and to, just see things from God's perspective.
So we're close to being out of time. If a person watching this is interested in becoming an ARMI member, or if, say, their pastor of their church, they'd like to present it to them, how do they do that?
Just go online to ARMI, ARMI-member.org, and ARMI-member.org. And man, we'd love to connect with you. We'd love to communicate with you, share more with you. We get you more information about ARMI.
So is that a separate website from AWMI? Mm-hmm. I tell you, Pastor Greg, as I said, he was in a great position running the Charis Bible College, but he just loves ministers. And this is something that I think you said, Janice, is just in total agreement that this is really what you're made
It's
to
our sweet
do.
spot, and ministering to ministers. I mean, it's just what an honor, and it's like we're fathers of the faith, and we want to pour into others and help them be successful, and we can help people further down the line than we.
So we've got about 800 ministers now that are a part of this that we're ministering to, and the way it's growing, we're going to be over 1,000 soon. So your partnership with us is enabling us to help ministers. And of course, each one of those 800 ministers reaches hundreds of people.
Yeah.
So we're probably talking about 80,000, 100,000, 200,000 people being influenced through this. And
That's awesome.
And it's awesome.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to give you a look behind the scenes, let you see Greg, and man, what a blessing he's been to us, and give you a little information about ARMI. These are things you wouldn't normally hear. So thank you for joining us. Remember, we do this every month. Join us again next month for a new Inside Story.
On this edition of Inside Story, Andrew interviewed Greg Mohr, who is celebrating 10 years working with Charis Bible College. Greg has taken over the leadership of the Association of Related Ministries International, ARMI.
Hi, my name is Greg Mohr. I'm the Executive Director of ARMI, which stands for the Association of Related Ministries International. Through ARMI, we're building a relational community of ministers, including pastors, church staff, traveling ministries, and marketplace ministries for the purpose of encouragement and support, networking, leadership training, and development in the kingdom. We also provide our members an abundance of resources from Andrew Wommack Ministries to help them achieve success in their calling. I encourage everyone to go online to armi-member.org and check us out. We would love to welcome you into the ARMI family.
Join arms with ministers who are making a difference. Make a decision to join ARMI today. Be sure to look for the next Inside Story here on the Andrew Wommack Ministries website. In October, we're celebrating the 100th edition of Inside Story. On this edition, you will meet the producer and editor of Inside Story, Karen and Ron Beeright. Not only do they produce Inside Story, but they have traveled to most of Andrew's conferences around the U.S. and conducted over 1,600 video impact interviews. You won't want to miss our November edition on Jacob and Linda Olofsson. Find out what happened when God called one family from Sweden to go places they had never been and do things they had never done, and ended up at Charis Bible College. You cannot manufacture a calling from God, but you must discover your calling. See you next time